Well, g'day, folks. Today you're in for a treat. We're going to be joined by Paul Roos. He's a 2005 Sydney Swans Premiership coach, coached 66 games at the Melbourne Demons as well, played 269 games for Fitzroy, 87 at the Swans, 2005, inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame, and played 14 games of State of Origin footy for Victoria. We'll find out his thoughts on those comments back in 2005 by Andrew Demetriou about his coaching style and whether we'll see Roosy again in the media going forward. This plus much more on Legends with Bevo.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdie, Coopers, and Anytime Fitness Glenelg.
Paul Roos, great to have you on Legends with Bevo. How are you going at the moment, mates, and how are you dealing with this COVID situation?
Yeah, good, Bevo. Thanks for having me on. It's really quite strange, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's what's happening in Victoria compared to happening in South Australia and then Western Australia and then Queensland. And then if you look around the world, in America and Paris, and it's hard to make any sort of sense out of it because, I mean, supposedly it's the same virus worldwide, but there's so many different rules and regulations, and some people saying wear masks, some people don't wear masks, people shutting the border down. It's funny, it almost feels like we've got 7 different countries in Australia now, not one country. I think that's probably the thing that's really hit me. Everyone's become so protective of their territory and so insular, and it's no longer about us. You know, that's a real concern. You know, it's no longer about us as a country. It's about, you know, me and what can I get out of it, and it's become incredibly political. And yeah, it's not a great time, really, is it?
No, you're right. I guess one of the real positives I was being the AFL. And, you know, who would have thought that we'd get to nearly a whole season, 1 round to go, obviously, you know, with the whole situation. They've done a remarkable job with there's all these hubs and everything else going on. But how have you seen the AFL season?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I've been really disappointed, I guess, in the media a bit and how critical they've been of the games and, you know, and the low scoring and all those sorts of things. I mean, what the AFL have done and what the clubs and coaches and players and wives and families been incredible, really. I mean, they've cut the quarters down, so clearly scoring is going to be down. But the fact that they've, you know, gone into hubs and, you know, playing sort of 4 games in 20 days and all that sort of stuff. So I just think they've done a wonderful job. And, you know, having not had the footy for so long, and I know, you know, my mum's a classic example of someone that lives by herself. She's mid-80s, you know, particularly in Victoria. But, you know, people love watching the footy and, you know, to have it on every night, you know, in particular parts of the season's been great, but it's just been really important for the community, I think, to have the footy back on. And, you know, particularly, as I said, in Victoria, where things are extremely tough down there.
No, well said. And it's been an unreal season as well, I reckon. I'm pretty happy, mate, over here in South Australia. I'm a power man, so. But it's been very even season as well, and we've seen some really close games. And you know, we've seen in recent weeks, obviously the Crows knocked out the Giants the other week, and you know, it just goes to show how even the competition is as well this year.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it? I'll be interested in the clubs at the end of the season when they reflect as to how much they've taken out of the season generally, or do they sort of say, because there's so many different challenges and so many different, because you can get it wrong, right or wrong either way, can't you? You can think you're a bit closer than what you are, a bit further away. But I think you're probably going to have to analyse this season way more than any other season. How much has the flight impacted? How much are the hubs impacted? I mean, if you look at Port Power and the Crows and Freo, West Coast and Brisbane Lions and the Suns, they've played a lot of home games, whereas if you're a Victorian club, you've hardly played any home games, if any at all. So there's a lot of differences this year. But I agree. I mean, I think it's been fascinating. It's been some great games, been really even. Had a couple of comebacks. Probably haven't, once you get behind, it's been really hard to get sort of back into the contest. So that's probably one of the tougher things about the shorter quarters. But yeah, look, I've really enjoyed it. Been some really good games, and as usual, it's been some poor games. But that's just the way footy is when you've got 9 games on the weekend.
Yeah, well said. And your thoughts on the grand final being at the Gabba this year, a night grand final?
I'm not a fan of a night grand final, although I think you might as well experiment this year because it is different anyway. You know, so it's like the MCG. You know, I'd be horrified to think, you know, there's a night grand final at the MCG because, you know, we've created a real niche for ourselves in that, you know, start during the day, and it's an amazing event. But I think why not try it in Brisbane? I'm glad the Gabba have got it. You know, they've been really good. The Gabba are hosting so many games, and Metricom hosting so many games, and the hubs up there with Cairns and so forth. It's good reward for them. Makes it a lot easier for the Lions too, I must say. So I think Chris Fagan will be doing cartwheels. It doesn't sort of guarantee clearly, but for all truly national competition, it shouldn't be at the MCG for the next 50 years, but it's a good result. So I think it's fantastic, and it's going to be fascinating to see who plays off in the grand final, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely cannot wait. Obviously, only one more normal round to go and then into the finals. Now, yourself personally, Roosy, what are you up to these days? I see you've got a podcast called The Culture Couch, and you're doing some great stuff on the House of Wellness as well. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of businesses. One is Performance by Design, which we really focus on leadership and culture for companies, and do a lot of corporate stuff, which is fantastic. I really enjoy it. Really extension of what I sort of started at the Sydney Swans and what I learned over 35 years of being involved in football, which is great. I've got another company which is a little bit on hold at the moment, as you can imagine, which is the Nurture Group Retreats, and we run sort of business and wellness retreats out of Fiji, which has been amazing as well. Been on the House of Wellness with my wife Tammy, and Tammy's fantastic, does a really good job at teaching meditation and teaching wellness. So it's been really exciting being part of that. Doing a little segment with her every week it's been really good. So look, really passionate about the leadership space, the wellness space, the health space, and really enjoying that.
And I actually read something very interesting as well, Roosy, this week, doing some research about your great self, and I found out that you actually meditated on the day of games when you were coaching. Tell us more about that and sort of, I guess, the benefits you got from doing that.
Yeah, so Tammy and I learned to meditate over 20 years ago. So it's sort of been a staple of my sort of routine for 20 plus years. And certainly the day that I never missed was the day of the game, and what it does is it really calms you down. It's just sort of like giving your mind a rest. That's probably the best way to explain it. So I used to just sit and meditate before the game, and the number of times that I would, have some real clarity coming out of that is what we have to speak to the players about. And there's no doubt that regular practice helped me on game day. It's it's an extremely stressful period, and you've got to make really clear decisions under enormous pressure. So, I mean, Tammy's fantastic at telling you about the physiological benefits, which there's been so many studies about meditation and what it actually does to the brain, and how it helps the stress, helps relationships, helps communication, all those sorts of things. But the way I best describe it, it just gives your mind a rest, for 10, 15, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, however long you do it. And it just gives the ability to, remain calm under those really pressure situations. So as a senior coach, you can imagine how, difficult that was at times. And there's no doubt the meditation helped. And I know in speaking to a lot of CEOs, a lot of sports people, it's one of the greatest tools that they have in their kick bag, that they do it regularly. And it certainly has enormous benefits.
And your illustrious career as a player, mate, you were named in the Fitzroy Team of the Century as the centre half back there, and obviously when you played the Swans, and then we know about your coaching career as well. Tell us all about your footy career, and I guess in terms from a playing perspective, some of your finest achievements. Yeah,
it's actually been interesting. I've just of recent times, a few of my teammates, we've been going for a wander on a Sunday morning. It's been great. Mickey Conlon, Laurie Serafini, Leon Harris, Scotty Clayton. It's been a bit harder under the COVID rules. But it's been magnificent connecting with those guys. I was really fortunate to go to Fitzroy. Had an amazing group of players. I catch up with Gary Wilson regularly now. He lives not far from me. And to reminisce about those great times, it wasn't just about the footy. It was the times we had off the field, and they were really good role models, and I was really, really fortunate. So I can't speak highly enough of my time at Fitzroy. And the highlights there, and, look, in the early 80s, we're really successful. We played in the finals in 83, 84, 86. Had a really good run in 86, got beaten in the prelim final by Hawthorn quite convincingly. 83, we were really close to winning a premiership. I think it was the famous Mickey Nettlefold run the ball over the boundary line, and it's the first decision ever in 110 years of footy of deliberate out of bounds, and old Tucky kicked the ball and put him in front late in the last quarter. So we had some really good teams, really great players, and then it sort of fell apart a bit, obviously, with the money side of it. But the connection with the players has always been strong. Gary Pert and Johnny Blakey and Alistair Lynch and Ross Lyon. And you can still see a lot of those players are still involved in footy, which is amazing. But the highlights were probably just the relationships, the early 80s, the great teams, and then clearly going to Sydney. I think getting to play with Tony Lockett and Paul Kelly, it was really exciting. Getting coached by Barras, was amazing. Was fantastic. And we probably didn't think we were going to have the success we had so quickly. I got up there with Plugger in 95 and we struggled a bit in 95, and then we played in finals 96, 97, 98, my last 3 years, and played in the grand final in 96. So, that was clearly a highlight, playing in the grand final, even though we lost it. It was just amazing to get on the MCG after, for me, it was 14 years of footy, and I didn't think I'd ever play in a grand final. So to get there and then clearly from a coaching point of view, 2005 was, extraordinary, and just the success the club's had, since then. But that grand final was amazing.
I remember one of my favourite things from 2005 was when you did the big, here it is. Everyone was just like absolutely pumped for you, and obviously you could just see that jubilation and that relief. The first premiership in 72 years for the Swannies. What was it like that particular day when that siren went, Roosy? What was the feeling like?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you touched on Port before, and I actually learned a lot the year before when Choco won it. And I sort of, when he came down the boundary line, he grabbed his tie, he's sort of hanging around his neck, and then I think he said something about the major sponsor, you were wrong. And I sort of remember in that moment thinking, gee, I hope he's actually really enjoyed it. I hope he didn't get overly caught up in the, we all get criticised. I mean, we got criticised by Demetriou in 2005. And I actually learned a lot from that moment from Choco. And I remember thinking to myself, if I ever get myself in that position, I want to be really present. I want to be really calm, and I really want to enjoy the whole experience. And I think because I saw that happen for Choco, and the Friday night before the game, to be perfectly frank, you're often rehearsing your victory speech and your losing speech. So you're sort of going through both scenarios in your mind. So, and I remember clearly the last few minutes, because I remember when the ball was kicked out and Coxie marked it over Joel's, and I turned the other way and I looked down the other end of the ground. I knew there wasn't very long to go, and I thought, well, there's nothing I can do now. And then the ball got kicked back in, and I think it was Peter Jonas or someone yelled out, oh, Leo's marked it. And then someone else, because we couldn't hear the siren, someone else yelled out, oh, the siren's gone. And because I sort of thought through, we had, I can still remember it so clearly, in the box with all the coaches after the game, walking through, because that was the time when you walked through the crowd, which was, I'm so glad we won it then, not going down the lift and having to go underneath, because we walked through the crowd, seeing the faces of all the Swans fans and just the euphoria, walking on the ground, seeing my wife and family, and all the people who put so much time and effort and money into the footy club, and then Barry Round and Dennis Carroll and some of the greats, and then to get Paul Kelly to give me the cup, and every moment is just incredible part of the history. And whilst I haven't watched the game that often, it's funny when you watch every now and then Leo's mark comes up and you still get nervous thinking he's going to drop it. And I was thinking, I hope he doesn't drop it. It's 15 years ago and you still get nervous when he goes for that mark. And it's pretty cool. And then, the dinner that night and going back to Lakeside Oval the next day, and then the parade in Sydney was crazy, being a rugby union state. I remember getting in the car with Hawley, and I remember thinking, I think I might have even said to Hawley, geez, I hope people turn out for this parade. This is in Sydney. Like, this is going to be quite embarrassing. And as we left where we got on, because we couldn't really see where we were going, and as soon as we got out into the streets, it was just ridiculous. How many people were there. And then we got to the town hall, and so it was unbelievably cool, and so many great memories.
And we spoke about this before, obviously, in terms of your footy career, 14 state games for Victoria. What was it like to play against some of the best players in Australia and play with some of those as well, Roosy?
Again, as you look back on it, probably at the time you didn't realise how privileged you were. I remember going to the first training session for the state team. The ball didn't hit the ground. I'm thinking, geez, the skill level was just ridiculous. I thought, geez, and you're so nervous when you first arrive. You think, geez, I hope I don't drop the ball. I hope I don't make a mistake. You're looking around. There's Tim Watson and Simon Madden and Gary Ayres and blokes that you play against, you never get it. And the skill level of training was just off the charts. It was just ridiculous. And I remember my first game, I think it was 85, and in South Australia, and I actually played on the wing. And since my great mate Greg Anderson, he said he towed me up, but I said I towed him up. And we lost the game. But as silly as it sounds, I think because I played at Fitzroy, if someone had said to me, would you rather play a state game at MCG or would you rather play at Football Park or Subi or the Western Australian ground where they used to play it, I probably would have picked Football Park because it was such a cool environment, even though it was all against us. As a Fitzroy player, when we often didn't play in front of big crowds, I just loved it. Loved getting over there and loved playing at Subi and loved playing at Footy Park. It was just and then, playing on the great players, Kerners, I had a great respect for him and played on him a lot when I was at Fitzroy Carlton, but playing on him and, and looking around and great mates of mine now, but the midfield of McGuinness and McDermott and Jarman and, I roomed with Andrew Jarman and then we played together in the Gaelic tour, which was really cool in 86 and 87. I roomed with Jars in Ireland, and that was an experience in itself. Let me assure you.
I was going to say that would be an experience.
And I really think it's something that I don't think you can do it again, but it's certainly something the players would miss now, because the ability to connect with players from other teams, the ability to play against great players in State of Origin, and they were, as you know, they were incredibly high standard, those games, amazing games of footy, and it's just a privilege and a pleasure to be part of it, really.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, I guess, that we don't sort of have the State of Origin now, the SA versus Victoria, like we see in the rugby with the Queensland versus New South Wales rivalry. It's so good, but I suppose because of all these in-state teams and stuff, Rosie, it's not quite the same anymore.
Yeah, and I think the reason you can't duplicate it is in some way. I mean, the Crows is a big club now, and Port's become a big club. So having coached against both those teams, particularly the new venue, I mean, it's really like a State of Origin game anyway, to be perfectly frank. I was lucky to coach Melbourne, at that new stadium, and it's an incredible stadium, and the rivalry and the passion of the Port fans and the Crows fans, the rivalry and the passion of the West Coast Eagles fans. So you sort of get it every week now. So I think that's why you can't duplicate. I mean, we didn't get those games in the early 80s. We didn't play against any South Australians or West Australian teams. So, but now you do. And I think that rivalry is superseded it. It's different, but it is a little bit similar, having played for Victoria and having coached against, Adelaide Crows and Port for both Sydney and Melbourne. It is similar. So I don't think they're missing out as much as what people say. It's probably just the ability to play with those great players, and play against the best players in the one team that they really miss out on.
In terms of, you mentioned Melbourne before, 66 games you coached the D's, and you had a bit of a tough run there. Do you have any regrets for coaching Melbourne, or you still sort of feel like you made the right decision moving across?
No, I loved it. I mean, I think because Peter Jackson painted a really clear picture of how difficult the job was going to be, I knew exactly how hard it was going to be. And, part of it was the succession plan and saying, look, I don't have the energy, take a club for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and I really probably looked at myself more as the CEO or the general manager of football, and the coach, and bringing all the Swans people in. And, I was really proud of everything we did at Melbourne over that particular period of time. To get a 2-win team to winning 10 games is a really difficult thing to do, in the salary cap and the draft era, particularly with the Giants coming in and the Suns coming in. And, we've seen what they've done to the talent, dispersed the talent so much. So it was a great effort from so many people at the footy club. And then to play in the prelim final 2 years later was amazing to see the club, get to that level after they've been in such a low position, the year before I got there, and probably for 6 or 7 years before that. So, and I loved my time there. It was difficult and, a lot harder. But, as I said, from a leadership point of view and a learning point of view, and, it was fantastic.
In 2005, you were inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame, Roosy, for your illustrious career at Fitzroy and the Swans. What did this mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Probably because my wife's American, and I've been following American sport for so long. I mean, the Hall of Fame in America is, for those who don't know, it is the absolute ultimate. I mean, it probably doesn't have the same cachet, or didn't when it first started in Australia. Certainly, people didn't be well aware of what they're trying to get with their Hall of Fame. They've done a great job, with it. And I think now it's really become, incredibly prestigious, as is the American model with the NFL and, basketball, et cetera, et cetera. So, in 05, and I guess it's one of those things when you look back on more so than when it happens, because it was great. My kids were there. My wife was there. A few contemporaries got inducted in the same year, which was amazing too. But I think now when you look back on it and you reflect on your career, and it's probably when you do things like these, when people bring up your achievements, you sort of say, look, I'd never set out at Fitzroy to ultimately play 14 games for Victoria and make All Australians and Hall of Fames. You just try and do the best you possibly can. So the pride comes with the fact that, you've been able to do that. You've been able to play to the best of your ability and get the best out of yourself. And whether that's making a Hall of Fame or whether that's, a player that only plays 50 games because they perhaps don't have the same level of talent. For me, sport is all about optimising your talent. Not only sport, but life is really optimising your talent and getting the absolute best out of you possibly can. So I guess for me, I was able to achieve those goals and to look back now and to be a Hall of Fame member, to play for Victoria and All Australian, all those sort of things. Yeah, you're really proud of it. It's certainly, you don't think about it too often, but when you do, you reflect on it and really proud about what you've achieved.
And you touched on this before, Roosy, with Demetriou's comments in 2005 about your coaching. He was pretty critical of the way you're coaching, even though you're having such great success with the Swans. What was your feeling when you sort of heard what he said to you in the first instance?
Yeah, I just thought it was strange. I thought, we were in a rugby league, rugby union town, and we were sort of doing so much more for the game than just playing on the weekend. And for him, I always sort of thought it was a bit like the CEO of Pepsi saying, "Oh, look, don't drink Pepsi in New South Wales, drink Coke." And I sort of thought, imagine if the CEO of Pepsi said that. It was just a really strange thing to say, from the CEO of the AFL, where we're trying to promote the game in New South Wales, and he's just slaughtering us on the back of it. So I was just really, really surprised, to be honest. But my second reaction was, look, I can't run the AFL and he couldn't coach the Swans, and I say that respectfully. So, when you break it down, his job was to be CEO of the AFL and my job was to coach the Swans. And, at the time that he criticised, we just knew we weren't playing well. We knew we had a game style that could potentially win a premiership, but you never really know. And obviously we won the premiership in 05, which was fantastic.
And before I let you go, Roosy, just a couple of quick ones for you. I know this is very hard because you played with and against some absolute superstars that you've mentioned before, but the best player you've coached, played with and played against?
The best player I coached, and I answer this differently because I've coached so many great players, and I think the art of coaching is always to ask players to do things you think they're physically capable of doing. And as great as Kirky was, I wasn't never asking him to do something I didn't think he could do. And whereas Barry Hall, Mickey O'Loughlin. So for that reason, Leo Barry stands out for me because I was asking him to do something that he physically wasn't capable of doing. I mean, he was full back at 184 centimetres and 84 kilos. And so not the best player I've ever coached, but I answer it that way to say, I was asking Leo to do something that I just thought he couldn't capably do it. He was playing against Matty Lloyd. He kept Fraser Gehrig kickless at the SCG one day. And Fraser Gehrig would be, 6'5" and 110, 105 kilos. And Leo Barry was generally 184 centimetres and 84. So for that reason, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say I was asking Leo to do something that I didn't think he could do, and he did it. Which is not the role of the coach is not to ask someone to do something they can't do, is actually to put them in positions. So Leo was such a good athlete and read the ball so well. for us. So for that reason, he was just incredible what he was able to do. But I coached so many great players that I've touched on. Best player I've played with, it's hard to go past. I'm going to go with two: Gary Wilson and Tony Lockett. Gary Wilson. If someone said to me, you could start a team today with any player you've ever played with, who would it be? And it'd be a toss-up. Probably I'd take Flea because he's a midfielder, and I think midfielders shape games now. I think Gary Wilson, but Plugger. I mean, what can I say about Plugger? I mean, to watch him train, he never missed a target, never dropped the ball, never handball along the ground. And his skill level for a big guy was incredible. The best player I've coached or played against, again, it's hard, but Gary Ablett Jr. was just at his best. It was just off the charts. He could take a 20-80 ball, 20% his ability to get 80% the opposition and turn it into a win. Like his ability to impact. I remember 3/4 time thinking, I think we played Kieran Jack on him at Cardinia Park one day, and I thought, geez, we're doing actually a really good job on Gary Ablett Jr. And I think he ended up with 5 goals and 35 possessions at the end of the game. And I actually thought Kieran Jack did a really good job, and he pretty much won the game for him. But he just had that ability to impact a contest like I hadn't seen a player before. Now, I mean, Wayne Carey was incredible, but it's splitting hairs, as you know, at that end. But if you had said to me, who's the best, it'd probably be Gary Ablett Jr.
And going finally, before we let you go, Roosy, any sort of interest in going forward of being in the media or still coaching in the future, or are you sort of happy just with what you're doing right now?
Look, I'm really enjoying it, and took a break from the media this year, ironically, to go travelling. And I was supposed to go in the Croatia, France, sort of put on hold, sort of thing. So, which was, look, I love footy. You never say never in terms of anything, but I really enjoy doing the performance by design, the nurture group retreats, the wellness component, the leadership component. I'm really enjoying it. Certainly gives more flexibility to get overseas and to travel and to do the things that I love doing as well. And but yeah, look, footy's been a big part of my life for so many years, and who knows where it brings in the future. But yeah, at the moment, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing.
Well, this has been an absolute blast chatting to you today, Paul Roos. Thanks so much for your time, mate, and well done on your amazing career as a coach and a player, and wishing you all the best in the future, mate, and hopefully we can catch up and have a beer with you one of these days.
Thanks, Bevo. Good on you, mate. Fantastic. Pleasure.
Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdie, Coopers, and Anytime Fitness Glenelg.